Hi, and with the news that Bungie have parted ways with Activision Blizzard, for me, not a story I'd be particularly interested in, because this game back here, I've never played it and no inclination to play it. Not even been a Halo player. There's an awful lot of people talking about if this could be a herald for something, let's say, Blizzard splitting away and getting back onto the right track with games like World of Warcraft. No, I think that's complete pie in the sky thinking, and here's why. So there are a number of aspects to this which means it has no bearing on Blizzard and it has no bearing on any Blizzard game. The first of which is simple relationship. Blizzard and Activision merged to form Activision Blizzard. Blizzard are the junior party in that. I keep saying party when I mean partner. I don't know what's wrong with me. Get it right. But Bungie just had a contract with the company. You know, that meant that Activision Blizzard had a stake in Halo and Destiny series. So all Bungie has really done is remove itself from that contract a little earlier than was planned anyway, and got the publishing rights to those things. So then they're sort of properly independent again, because, you know, they were independent for a very brief period and then needed some capital, I guess, and that's why they formed the contract with Activision Blizzard. So that's a completely different situation to Blizzard. You know, they don't have contracts. They've merged as a company there. Actually, I had to say this earlier. The slightly spicy bit of news is apparently there's a bit of a legal investigation into it as well. I don't know whether that's just standard, and I don't know whether, you know, it's just someone independently getting a solicitor to check it out. But yeah, so it's just been checked to make sure it's all above board. But I haven't heard anything dodgy about the deal, I suppose, the breakaway deal. So I don't know. That may just be a standard thing, or it may be just someone being a bit spiteful. Who knows? But the other thing is, people for the longest time have blamed Activision for the fact that, you know, and I've talked about this enough, that Blizzard over the last few years have really been well out of touch with their player base, and as a result are not producing a game that's not good enough for a lot of the players, although we can see by the massive loss of subs that, you know, very recently, that, you know, you'd certainly make an argument for that. But it's, you know, people keep saying, well, it's all got to be the Activision. And I think it's because people remember when Blizzard was a really great company with strong links to its player base and produced top quality games. And when it wasn't ready, it wasn't brought out. Complete, I wouldn't say polar opposite, that would be unfair, but very much different to the way that the games are treated now and that the player base are treated now. Whereas those same players may have very little regard for Activision. So it's like, oh, well, we don't think Activision are a good games development company, but Blizzard are a great development company, but Blizzard are being really crap at the moment, must be Activision. But I don't really think this has held any water. And I think you have to look at what is it about Activision that people particularly don't like. And what it is, it's the modern thing really, isn't it? A game comes out, you purchase a game. And then there's a load of microtransactions to purchase that you feel you need in order to get the best out of that game. That is the major issue with Activision. That is not something that has translated across to World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft, all right, on the online store, you've got a few mangy pets and a few mangy mounts. Actually, that's not fair. Some of them are quite good. But there's a piss poor collection. It's not added to very often. You know, you've got your services on there, but the services were there before Activision ever honed into view that it just wasn't on an online store. The online store just makes it more convenient. There isn't really anything microtransaction-y about it. I mean, some people will point to the WoW token, but, you know, you've also got to bear in mind that's also a tool to cut down on gold sellers, and that's worked. It worked like a charm. But, you know, when we're talking about microtransactions, we are really talking about loot boxes, things like that. That's what we're talking about, where people are sort of incentivized, almost like along gambling lines, to get these things and break them out in the game, like there are in other MMOs. Blizzard have not done that with World of Warcraft. And even when they've done it with Overwatch, it's generally regarded as being a very safe way to do it, purely cosmetic. You know, you don't feel the need to get them. So I don't buy that there's been a load of interference from Activision. I don't buy that interference has negatively affected the game, and that Blizzard would love to do it properly again. I don't get that. Now, the other thing, where there potentially has been interference from Activision. So a few years ago, when they were developing Legion and MOP in parallel, Legion and WoD in parallel during MOP, the reason they were doing that was because they were planning on bringing out expansions every year. Now, that to me had the hallmark of Activision. That to me had that. And that I will believe would have been interference from Activision. But they basically didn't play ball. There was no way that was going to happen. And they've since dropped that plan even. And actually, you could argue World of Warcraft gained from it because they basically doubled their development team. In order to do 2 expansions in parallel, they needed loads more developers. They got loads more developers. So now they've got loads more developers. Now that they're even just working on 1 expansion at a time. So that sounds like a win for World of Warcraft to me, or at least should have been. The other thing is much, much more recent. There are reports of Blizzard employees feeling now, not over the past few years, but just now, the effects of this. For the first time ever, the World of Warcraft team have been told about cutbacks. Now, again, you could argue that that wouldn't necessarily be a huge surprise. After all, if you got your massively expanded development team and therefore budget to work on 2 projects in parallel, 2 expansions in parallel, and now you're not doing that, well, maybe it makes sense that some bean counter has come along and said, well, you're not doing that anymore, so we might as well actually cut your costs. So that again may not be Activision, but equally I think it's regarded as being. But those are the only 2 things I would say are definite interference. I think we have to face facts. Try and imagine it from this point of view. So the senior guys at Blizzard, the senior corporate guys at Blizzard, they were games developers. We know these guys from when Warcraft was young, and even World of Warcraft. They developed games. That's what they did. They haven't done that for a long time. A long time. Doesn't mean to say they don't know anything about their games, but they haven't done any actual development. And we can sort of know this because it's very difficult to know what these executives get up to, but we understand executives on a board are not involved in the day-to-day development of a game. They're more corporate beasts now. But we could sort of tell from Chris Metzen's interviews when he stepped down, he sort of was talking about the fact he didn't really enjoy being vice president. It was a fantastic promotion, but he didn't really enjoy it because he said it was nothing to do with the games. It was all about managing people and getting people to work together and cooling down arguments and all that sort of business. And he was removed from the games development. So how much more, the rest of the board in that position? I think it just comes down to this. They used to be games developers. They're now corporate beasts. They now think in those terms. It's got to change your perception. It really has. And then the other thing is I don't necessarily think they've got the best people into those senior development roles. The people who do the games, the day-to-day development for the games, the senior people who decide things as well, who coordinate those teams. I think some of those senior developers, some of them that have been there for a long time, I think have just been jaded and probably should freshen it up. And some of them have been. Some of them have been moved on to other projects within the company, recognising that they have the talent. They just, haven't been putting it out for that game. Maybe they just need to change it up and go and do a different game. Some of them, I think, with Ian Hazzikostas, I don't slate him as much as some people do. But the fact of the matter remains, he was a very well-regarded encounter designer. He was very good at that. Everyone sort of says so. That being said, that is not it's like in any industry, isn't it? You can be really good at your job, and then that puts you in pole position for promotions to a job that actually uses completely different skills. And I think the same thing happened there. I don't think he's good at coordinating the teams because the teams are not coordinated. Lots of things keep coming out. We knew from Tumas Sargeras that there was no coordination between class design and encounter design teams. In fact, there was no coordination within the encounter design teams. Because that was the big thing with Tumas Sargeras. They almost all the fights had these soak mechanics on Mythic because even within that one team, they weren't talking to each other once they'd peeled off and working on different bosses. The arts team, we were talking about the way the writing team works last week. And again, it's pretty apparent from that you have far too many people feeding into that writing process, as well as the fact that the writers are not getting to plan very far in advance. They keep talking about story arcs that take years to develop, sure, but the nitty-gritty is being changed, and we've seen evidence of this before anyway, is being changed at the last minute, which means you writers are not getting to plan things out in detail long term. They're only getting to sketch things out long term, and the detail has to be done very quickly, and of course mistakes are going to happen. And that's why I think the storyline is engaging in World of Warcraft, but the individual bits of it, a lot of it doesn't make sense, and that's the problem. And it's down to coordination. It's down to how you manage those teams, and that ultimately is Ian Hazzikostas, and ultimately I don't think he's effective in that role at all. So I think part of it also comes down to that. I think the reason why I think Blizzard has changed as a company. I don't think anything would fundamentally change if, for example, it's split, which I don't see happening, as I've already said. I don't think anything would fundamentally change because those people in charge are the corporate beasts now. They've changed. They're not the same people. And, well, they are the same people. And I'm not saying they've changed as people, but their perception has changed because they've now been focused on the corporate side of things as opposed to the games development side of things. And I think that's all there is to it. I don't think this has got anything to do with Activision at all. Splitting from Activision not only wouldn't happen, or you can never say never, but it's not realistic, but it wouldn't help anyway. I think Blizzard is as it is now. I think Blizzard has fundamentally changed. Until we see loot boxes in World of Warcraft, I don't believe that Activision has any serious influence on the game, with the possible exception, as I say, of leaning on people to cut costs. But again, you know, when you look at a situation where the company has just lost quite a lot of its value, I mean, isn't that going to be an obvious thing for people to start saying in any department? So those are my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what your thoughts are, of course, in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, thought it interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, click the bell notification, share with other people. And until next time, I'll see you later.